ones we know are to consider dimensions beneath the ones we know. In other words, it's a lot easier for us to look at 3 dimensions and try to imagine a world in 2 dimensions and understand how miracles can happen in that world. Let me introduce you to what I call flatland. Flatland will be, for purposes of this example, will be this tabletop. It's flat. It's 2-dimensional. Now, imagine that I've created this world, flatland, and I've created many types of creatures. And I'm going to introduce you to here a couple I've cut out. This is Mr. Flat, and here's another creature that I created, and we'll call it Mrs. Flat. And I can place these people in flatland, okay, and I can also create, I could cut out little fish, I could cut out birds, I could cut out all kinds of creatures and place them in this imaginary land called flatland. Now, how would Mr. and Mrs. Flat view each other? Well, to each other, they would really just look as a line, a single line. They wouldn't be able to have nearly the view that I have looking down on them. And if they want to learn more about each other, they kind of need to walk around each other, and they can get some kind of a concept of what they really are, but they can't really see the total picture the way I can. So, what would be a flatland miracle? Suppose I say a group of flatlanders was growing very, very hungry. If I wanted to, I could cut out a bunch of little fish, and I could just suddenly plop down a lot of little fish in flatland. They would miraculously appear. They would have no idea how I'm doing it, but I know because I exist in 3 dimensions. In 2 dimensions, coming one down 1 dimension, it would seem to be a miracle. Now, let's suppose I made another space that existed in 3 dimensions. We'll call these, the top of this set of books, 3-dimensional heaven. Now, these people in flatland can't see this area called heaven. But as the creator of flatland, I can do several things. Number one, if I want to insert myself in flatland, it's pretty easy. I just stick my finger down, and people will see what? They'll see a line. Or if I want to stick 3 fingers down, what will they see? They'll see 3 lines. So what do you know? Mr. Flat over here sees 1 line, and he says, I understand God. He's a line. This Mrs. Flat over here will see 3 and say, no, you're wrong. I see God, and God's 3 lines. But yet they have no concept of what I really am, which is, of course, a lot more than just a line or 3 lines. But if I wanted to create a miracle and transport one of these flatland people into my imaginary heaven, all I need to do is lift them up and place them in this new dimension. Yet someone down here has no concept whatsoever of what this other dimension is. Now, obviously, this whole object or this example of flatland is an extremely elementary example, and it doesn't address a lot of issues. But what it does do is help us realize that we are limited by dimensions of space and time. And to consider miracles, one should consider the very distinct possibility that science seems to support these days, that there are dimensions far beyond the ones that we live in. Let's talk about something that people sometimes fail to consider, and that is the source of the Bible's account of creation as itself, because it's the Bible. Now, in order to talk about this, we need to establish why should we believe the Bible in the first place. Did you know that the Bible contains 667 historical prophecies that have virtually all been confirmed to have happened? 667. Now, some of these prophecies were long-term prophecies, some were short-term prophecies, but many were extremely specific. For example, prophecies included the naming of Cyrus, the king of Persia, hundreds of years before he was even born, as the king that would eventually cause the temple in Jerusalem to be rebuilt hundreds of years before the temple was even destroyed. That's pretty incredible. Naming the person, naming the events, and naming what was going to happen. precise prophecies actually define the exact day that Jesus would enter Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. This day was defined hundreds of years before Christ. The list of prophecies in the Bible is enormous and absolutely mind-boggling. I could spend hours just talking about precise prophecies of times, of places, of events, of people. It really clearly reveals the inspiration of the Bible from God. The Bible also contains many scientific insights that were entirely correct thousands of years before science knew the facts. These insights are in areas of medicine, engineering. We've already named a few, the beginning of time, things that people just totally didn't understand until modern science. In fact, if you were to look at a list of some 40 or 50 scientific insights in the Bible, you would find that virtually none of them were discovered until at least 1,000 to 2,000 years later by science. Yet every single reference to science in the Bible is 100% accurate. And of course, the Bible is not a textbook on science, but because it's inspired by God, one would expect it to be accurate. An important one of these scientific insights is